Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host. And if this is your first Geekscape, strap yourselves in for all the pop culture talk that you can fit in your geek noggin. We've been doing this for 18 years, pretty much weekly, where I sit down with storytellers, movies, video games, comic books, TV, and we talk about basically whatever they've been working on. Sometimes they're musicians, sometimes they're actors, directors, sometimes they're just friends of mine who are passionate about this stuff and are like, well, we're going to be talking about this stuff and discussing it and turning it over anyway. We might as well record it, put it out, and build a community. And we've done that. Geekscape has over 30 shows now on the podcast network. It's amazing. And a lot of those shows came out of people like you who are listening to this or maybe watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch and being like, hey, this guy can clearly podcast. Why can't I? And not only do they start podcasting here at Geekscape, but they end up getting more listenership and getting more popular. Do I take it personally? No. I am nothing if not a platform for more geek enthusiasm, and that's what we're doing today. We're going to be talking all about the first season of Ahsoka. Should I differentiate first season? Will there be a second season? Those are all questions we're going to be asking over the course of the next hour. I've got Ian here. He's like the establishment here in Geekscape. Like you can't really have a discussion show without Ian. The man loves this stuff, and in many ways, me discussing things here on Geekscape was born out of discussions I was having with Ian. Anyway, we got Garrett here with us, my Padawan. Let's go with that for the Star Wars themed episode, and of course, there must be a dark side to balance the light. That would be Christian Blatt from Marvel Movie Talk, the Blattcast, the Geekscape Book Club. They're all sitting in the wings to get this thing started and talk some Ahsoka. So let me actually check if this is the microphone I want to use. It is. I didn't screw that up. Everything else in my life, yes. But I'll be right back. Let's start the show. We'll come back and we'll talk Ahsoka Season 1. You're going to have some major spoilers coming your way. So if you haven't watched it, dip out now. All right, Geekscapists, if you're listening to this, it might be because you've already seen the season of Ahsoka that's up on Disney Plus right now. It just culminated. There's tons of questions going forward. This is very much a continuation of things that Dave Filoni set up way back when in Clone Wars, continued in Rebels, and then you see pieces of in The Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and now in Ahsoka. As somebody who watched some of the Clone Wars, it didn't start getting really heated in hitting its Filoni groove by the time I was like, let me start watching something else. I like it. I will continue watching it sporadically, and that kept me from watching Rebels because it's all a continuation. If there's nothing we love here on Geekscape, it's some continuation. It's like this has to be canon, right? We love our long dramas, right? Doesn't mean I'm going to watch One Piece, maybe the Netflix show, but we do love our long series and the comic books, this and that. And of course, if you're talking like people who love comic books, you got to talk about this man who's been doing it since the 70s, and he's been collecting comics for a very long time, and he loves it, and he loves talking stories. So he's here with us, Mr. Ian Kerner, the establishment here at Geekscape. He's the foundation of any geek conversation that we have here. How are you, buddy?
Doing all right. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. We are so busy in our own lives and in our own pursuits that it's hard to schedule some of these sometimes, but we love doing it. We're going to be texting each other and talking about these things anyway. I love having these conversations. They're imperative to me to put closure and have some context to what I watched. And so I love having you here to kind of help us form some stability in our schedule. We've added my Padawan, Garrett Briones, and my nemesis, Christian. Christian, who I banished to another galaxy whenever he came on Geekscape once, and I was like, wow, this guy's so good at this. I cannot risk having him on the
But you know what,
Geekscape
Jonathan?
network
Your
anymore.
hatred only made me stronger.
True.
It lifted up the Black Cast to new heights, and then I was able to come back and shoot lightning into Geekscape many years later.
Well, I'm honored that you put that much in our relationship, that it fueled you. We are talking about Ahsoka, as I've said before. This is going to be your last spoiler warning right here if you're listening audibly or you're watching on one of our outlets. If you've seen it, your friends have seen it, you want to be a part of the discussion, share it with your friends. That really helps us out. Or maybe subscribe and all that stuff. That really helps us. And little reviews help our visibility. So when I reach out and ask for somebody to be on the Geekscape podcast, and their publicist goes and looks at our reviews and looks at what we've been up to, they say, oh yeah, this is awesome. We got some good guests coming up. But this episode, Geekscape is going to be spoiler filled and Ahsoka filled. So where do we want to start with this, guys? I think y'all three were the ones who watched the entirety of Clone Wars, carried it through Rebels, and then I got dropped right into episode 1. And I want to ask about that.
Hey, I saw the
episode
Clone
1
Wars movie in the theater.
And you watched
So
the
did I.
Clone Wars movie in the theater, yeah.
Right?
And I want to ask about that because I was dropped in to episode 1 of this one, and I don't think it was my lack of familiarity with some of these characters that affected it. I think that out of all 8 episodes, 1 is the one that that's the hump that it has to get over to really get cruising on this season.
Yeah, it's a slow one.
It really throws a lot at you. And I don't think it's just familiarity. I think it's just getting in the groove. I got to say, when I watched that first episode, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be fun for me. Not because it was so steeped in what you had to have seen before. Like you said, there's some pacing issues. There were things I didn't understand. Mainly character stuff, like why would the evil Jedi apprentice wait for Sabine to fight her, even though she had or just gotten what she wanted to get and could have just taken off and gotten that much more ahead of her, especially if she didn't actually kill her. Does that make sense? Little things like that in that first episode.
Yeah,
I was like, wait,
you have that stuff throughout all the Star Wars stuff. There's weird ego stuff with Dark Jedi, or Sith or what have you, to the extent that they're channeling the dark side and, it's all about emotions and passions. I think you could easily say the things they do don't always make sense because they're itching for a fight.
Yes, and I think that as you continue the series, and you really get into some of the questionable, like I would say mysterious motivations of my favorite character, Baylan, by the late great Ray Stevenson, like that. And we can talk about what we thought of the series as a whole if you'd like to, but Ray Stevenson, we just have to acknowledge how great he was in this, as he is in everything.
He was absolutely great.
How badly he'll be missed going forward. He's awesome in every single moment he's in this series.
My big disappointment is as we'll speculate what comes next, and the inability of resolving that storyline. I get they could recast, and that'll be disappointing on some level, So, yeah, it's really a shame.
So ultimately, when you look at like the 8 episodes, what did you guys think? Because that first taste for me did not have me anticipating it too much. But they dropped 2 episodes right away, and I could jump into that second one.
Yeah, the second one was much better. But let me say this, and I only really made this connection in my mind just now as I was referencing that first Clone Wars movie, because I got to tell you, I think Clone Wars was great, but I thought it started really slow. And I thought that when it originally came out, I felt in the original movie where Ahsoka's introduced, I rolled my eyes feeling, oh, this is just for kids. They have this kid character. And of course she has to die because we don't know who she is later. So that was really, for me, like, I was like, whatever, what am I watching? And the first season or so of Clone Wars is very much, it's just, animated action. It takes a while for the story development really to get going. So, a bit different, but again, with the first episode of this, they have to give you a lot particularly if you haven't watched Clone Wars and Rebels. You know, now I felt that they did a really good job of that backstory stuff. And, you know, I can't speak for people that haven't watched that stuff. But, you know, I mean, for all the people complaining, oh, I don't know who these characters are, you know what? I got to feel sometimes like, so what? Then go with it. I feel like if people didn't know that there was something before that they didn't watch, they wouldn't have been so resistant and angry about that. Does that make any sense?
It was a little. Say it again.
I think that if people didn't know that there was stuff they didn't know, and that
if it had just started as a blank slate and it was just
but
just
that's
let it
just
rip.
it.
Yeah,
you could have the same show and it's a blank slate. So many times they jump you ahead. When the Mandalorian started, the first episode, what do we know? Okay, we heard it was 5 years later. We don't know. We don't know this character. We don't know a lot of things. In fact, it took a while for us to. The whole time we're going, what is this whole thing? And we can't take his helmet off. It didn't make any sense to us until Bo-Katan explained it, right? In the second season.
I just accepted that as a Mandalorian code because my familiarity with the Mandalorians, but also mainly you never saw a Mandalorian really take a helmet off.
Well, but again, if you'd watch Rebels and Clone Wars, you have. So
right.
So that again, that's the thing is, you know, they're just. My point is, there's aspects of it that only because people knew they missed something did they complain about it. Otherwise, you wait for the story to tell you. And I think it did do a good job of letting people know what they needed to know.
Well, two things to what Ian said. First, my wife loved the Harry Potter movies, never even turned a page in any of the books. And her friends who loved the books were like, oh, but did you not get this part? Or she's like, no, I didn't know it was missing. So no, it was great. I liked it. It was fun.
Right.
And I kind of split the difference because like Ian, I saw that Clone Wars movie in the theater, but I'm a little bit closer to Jonathan in that, you know, it was on Cartoon Network and, you know, I don't even think I had a TiVo at the time. I had to remember to set my VCR for Saturday morning. So I didn't see that much of it. When I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. This character's cool. This one's cool. And then I'd miss whole seasons. And I checked out Rebels because I knew enough about it. And right away, I'm like, oh, wow, this is really the Disneyfication
from the start.
That we've been warned about.
Great.
It was. But at the same time, it was like we had a Chopper. He's much more cartoony, you know, and I liked it. And then I was probably going to be turned off by Rebels. But then Frank Oz was Yoda in an episode. I'm like, well, obviously I have to stick around because they're willing to do big stuff. I didn't see it through to the end, just to, you know, again, keeping track of everything. But I enjoyed it. I had enough familiarity. I knew who Sabine was. I knew, you know, I knew who Chopper was. I knew all that.
But we knew what happened in the finale, and because Ezra's fate and Thrawn's fate is really pretty important if you don't watch Rebels going into the season. It's a major. I mean, it's what the season's roughly all about.
Yeah, I think the first episode was kind of like that, you know, that first page in 70s and 80s Marvel Comics where it's like, yeah, this is probably somebody's first issue. All right. So here's who Reed Richards is. Here's who Nihilus is. You know what? Forget Nihilus. You know, and it's like you try to just like, all right, we'll give you enough and then you'll figure it out. Or by the way, maybe you won't figure it out.
I love that you use that analogy because I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I'm reading comics for so long, but, you know, I mean, all of us had to start somewhere. And that's the thing. I started collecting. I read comics a bit in the 70s, but I started seriously collecting in like 82. And that was the thing. Back then, it's like you knew all the seminal stories. You had the references all the time. You knew exactly what the issues were. And personally, I went back and bought most of them. I'm talking Marvel, right? But with Marvel comics, they just, whether it was through exposition or it was a first page of what it was, they told you everything you needed to know whenever you jumped in. You know, I mean, if you started at X-Men at issue 160, you know, if you started Amazing Spider-Man at issue 231, you know, it didn't matter because they told you what you needed to know.
Well, I don't want to go off. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but to Ian's point, my first Uncanny X-Men was number 176. Scott Summers is on his honeymoon with Madeline Pryor, and he fights a squid.
Yeah,
and
there's
late.
like
one,
great
but
cover.
There's like that's 1983. So there's one other page of like another story where like Wolverine's up to something with the Morlocks. I'm like, oh, I want to know what happens to that page. But it's the least accessible starting point. But it was enough that it hooked me, and I'm like, well, I want to see what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the X-Men all day. Maybe we should do a special X-Men for like those. Who was that 1 year artist, Paul?
Paul
Paul
Smith.
Smith,
Fantastic. Yeah.
like,
By
I
this
think
point, it was
that
John
was the
Romita
stuff.
Jr., but yeah.
The Paul Smith stuff was the stuff
yeah.
where I was like, this book's incredible. It's so
Agreed.
good looking and amazing,
Well,
because it
yeah.
looked like the cartoon stuff as an artist for Ralph Bakshi. This stuff, Ian, I texted you during the second episode, which I watched, a few hours after the first one, and I was like, yo, that
So improved.
that scene rips. The scene, and we're talking about the scene where they pursue the Baylan's apprentice to the shipping yard, to where they're building the ships. And I was like, oh, this is really clicking for me now. And I got to tell you guys, looking at the entire series, episode 3 leans a lot on some beats that we've got from New Hope, things like coming out of hyperspace into prematurely into an asteroid belt and a destroyed planet toyed, and things like that, and then seeing like a new super weapon type of thing, like that stuff.
Star Wars repeating beats.
Yeah, I got you on that. But guys, from episode 4 on, I'm fully in love with this series, and I surprised myself. By the time we get to the far off new, parallel galaxy, and we meet Thrawn, even the Elon Musk of it all, when we're seeing the set pieces of that Star Destroyer and the zombified, repaired with gold and shit, like stormtroopers, the scope of it feels amazing. And I'm like, okay, now Filoni's cooking with gas. This is what he is all about. And I got what the Filoni fanboy loyalists are all about, and I'm like, this is fun storytelling, regardless of what you think of acting, regardless of what you think of, like you said, Ian, repeat beats and things. I was so in. It was so awesome.
I have a couple quibbles which we could talk about, but generally love it. Love it. For me, honestly, episode 2 on, I was like, this is just great. It's everything I wanted,
Everything I wanted. And we can always talk about that middle episode where you see the place between, the Force stuff. But where do you guys want to start? Like, Garrett, where do you guys want to start with this? Because we're already 17 minutes in, but there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I was gonna say my background. I didn't get to it before we were talking about X-Men and squids. My background with Clone Wars, I saw the Clone Wars film, and I was probably more in the target demographic, being that I was a younger boy, and I saw it with my mom. Hi, Mom. She's probably watching right now. I saw that, and then I watched Rebels live, and I watched Clone Wars, I watched Rebels, all that. So going in, I think it was, I was always, I wasn't going to be lost. I was kind of worried that my mom and my girlfriend would be lost watching it, but as someone who went in, my girlfriend's only seen Rebels like kind of over my shoulder when I was rewatching it. She getting to watch it through her eyes was very interesting because she did immediately fall in love with character. She thought Ahsoka was the most badass Jedi she'd ever seen. And for me, I think that this series really, I think at first I didn't know what was the story we were trying to tell, not just fit things into continuity, set things up for the future. And I think around episode 5, when you're talking about Ahsoka and Anakin in the world between worlds, I think for me, this series really kind of honed in on something and kind of connected with the Last Jedi's idea of failure is the greatest teacher. And I know a lot of people say that they don't understand what Ahsoka learned through the season, or they don't understand what the show is trying to say. And I think it's a continued rumination on this idea that failure is not a bad thing. It can suck, but you kind of have to get up, dust yourself off, and figure out, what did I learn, and not be defined by the master that came before you. And she learns from Anakin. Just because he failed, just because he went down a dark path, that does not mean it's her fault, or that won't happen to her as well. And so I think that was the strongest thing that the series I really honed in on and I really connected with.
I think that's a really strong episode too. That episode, the Clone Wars throwback episode with the warnings and the Vader imagery and the warnings that Ahsoka might follow down a dark path. I thought that stuff was awesome. It worked for me. It totally clicked. I think some of the issues people have, though, is Sabine's the driving force for the season in a lot of ways. Even though it's called Ahsoka, Sabine, she's got some great motivations. She wants to get to the other galaxy where Ezra's been lost to. She starts that in the very first episode. That's Sabine's goal, and Ahsoka is a little bit more let's watch. Let's kind of take things in like a more wise and Jedi way. And if it's called Ahsoka, but Sabine is the most active character, I can see how that's frustrating for people. But when has this not just been a gang of science fiction like characters all on a ride together?
That's right. And I mean, look, again, that episode, The World Between Worlds, is, I mean, it's all Ahsoka and so much about her journey. And I think it's very much about her choice to either accept things or to fight and to live. Right. I mean,
plot wise, it doesn't throw the football very far down the field because there's not a lot, because she's in a state of like hibernation underneath the water or this and that.
Right.
That being said, character wise, it is a battle with herself, wondering if she is going to follow this dark path. I thought that Vader stuff was awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think without that, I was just gonna say that I know that a big, and you see it a lot with how Peridia is designed, a big, in the same way that George Lucas pulled a lot from Akira Kurosawa, and he pulled from Westerns, things like that. It is very apparent, and has been apparent for a long time, that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis are really big inspirations for Dave Filoni. And I think that episode being the moment when Ahsoka goes from being Ahsoka the Gray to Ahsoka the White, I think that episode is central to the plot, because without that development, I don't think she's as in tune with herself to use the Purrgil as their way, because she was just going to use the map like Thrawn and they were going to use. Yeah.
In the Purrgil and the space whales, yeah.
But that analogy for Gandalf I think is very on point. You know, she had conflict, and even conflict with Sabine, with how she was dealing with Sabine. You know, the Ahsoka before that would have had a much harder time with Sabine's choice. Right?
Yes. I mean, Sabine gives herself to the enemy, and the enemy destroys the map, so there is no continuation.
And I have to say, and it sort of reminds me a bit of like, you know,
or no following. Sorry, yeah.
No, over the years, you know, we've all, and I want to get into this in a different aspect, but you know, the ending to Return of the Jedi, it's always like Darth Vader's killed all these people, but at the end, he kills the Emperor, he's fully redeemed, he gets to go to heaven and be an angel. You know, it's like, I mean, so many people are like, wait, what? You know, that's it. You know, he's just fine. You know, one act of contrition,
and if you go by the special editions, he gets to be young again too. You know,
right.
The original theatrical cut, he was an old man, but now it's like, well, but look how handsome you are now. See, it makes up for everything. Exactly. It makes up for all those rebels you killed at the end of Rogue One.
Well, and by the way, it's not just a special edition. That's canon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. But you know, my heart appreciates that actor's name was Sebastian Shaw. But anyway, go ahead.
Well,
if you read the books. Oh, I was just going to add, if you read the books, it is actually canon that he goes back and forth between looking like Sebastian Shaw and looking like Hayden Christensen. That is a canon bit.
I like it.
I think the point is, exactly, even in that episode of Ahsoka, it's how he's seeing himself, right? And I want to discuss what exactly that is, who that is that Anakin, and particularly from what we get in that last shot, you know, of the last episode. But you know, the duality thing is really interesting. The purity of motive is interesting to me. What Ahsoka's looking to do, you know, and what that's all about. This show ended in a place of going I definitely did not expect. And obviously everyone's talking about those 3 episodes of Clone Wars, you know, about the overarching, you know, idea of what the Force is and what's going on. I'm fascinated by the fact that they ended it there. And that's the whole Baylan Skoll plot story, what he's looking for. You know, I find that never expected that. Honestly, if nothing else, that makes it important that this is Ahsoka. Okay. So you talk about it being, was it Sabine show? No. At the end there, it's very much and can only be Ahsoka on this journey because of what happened to Ahsoka. Previously, I get it. We have people that only seen the live version haven't seen it, but it's Ahsoka had this experience with Anakin very specifically. Yeah, but very specifically, she was Anakin's Padawan. You know, that is so important. That means so much more than just any random Jedi. That even that, as whatever Ezra did there, and as great as Ezra is in his way,
Ezra didn't do anything. He sat around with the Noti while Thrawn put his troops together. He protected the Noti.
You see all those dog tags? These chainmails made of stormtrooper dog tags.
He's grilling.
By the way, there's a reference that, you know, one of the things that disappointed me about the show is they give you pieces. I get it, it's a show, but there's a lot missing that we don't understand about what happened with Thrawn there and Ezra and the Night Sisters. And like for instance, those stormtroopers that had the red on them, well, I figured they were going to be zombies to begin with.
Same.
So then
people had
why did
problems
she
with
have
zombie.
to be reanimated?
Yeah.
But tell me Ezra blew up and killed a bunch of them, and that's what he has going for him is the zombies. So that was one of those places I was like, well, wait, what?
I take that one back. I actually thought they were repairs to the armor, not to dead stormtroopers. I thought those were armor repair over having been in this derelict galaxy for so long.
That could be.
In the same way that the Star Destroyer was completely repaired, and I was like, guys, the scope on that Star Destroyer showing up was fucking awesome. Real quick, Abe Duenas over in South Carolina says Ahsoka is taking the universe into the dark arts. Feels like it's becoming Magic the Gathering. It's always been sci-fi fantasy. So this has always had a place in it, this isn't Star Trek. This is sci-fi fantasy.
So here's the thing, particularly Clone Wars. For anyone that's a Star Wars fan that hasn't watched Clone Wars, the thing I've said to most people about it when I say you really should watch this is Filoni got his hands on it and he redeemed the prequels. He makes them work. They expound on so many ideas because in a similar fashion to what I'm saying about Ahsoka, you have that same issue with the prequels. There's so much story that isn't on the screen. There's so much about, in particular, the transition for Anakin going dark. You see it happening over the course of Clone Wars. In particular, you see exactly what Palpatine did in manipulating the Jedi and putting them in these trying situations that just slowly more and more tainted them. Took them away from what they were supposed to be as, true guardians, and, instead, being soldiers. It's not what Jedi is supposed to be. So he tainted the light side, in particular, Anakin.
Is that a strike against the prequels that they are thin in that way? Or is it a boon to the fact that Lucasfilm was like one of the very first companies that did the whole transmedia across multiple outlets? The Clone Wars is almost, if you really want to have if you want to enjoy the prequels, Clone Wars really is kind of like you kind of have to watch it.
No, I think that, but the problem is they made it later, so and Lucas was involved.
But it's not revisionism. It feels like filling in the blanks, right? It doesn't feel entirely like revisionism. It doesn't necessarily contradict anything.
It existed because Lucas wanted to flesh out that era, and he's you listen to Dave Filoni talk about it. Yes, he did have a lot of, that was when he was full on his Padawan, but you listen to stories, a lot of the times he would literally say they'd be walking in the hall and George would randomly go, oh yeah, Darth Maul's coming back. And he would go, figure it out. And then I think recently I heard the anecdote that Dave Filoni was late to a meeting. And when he walked in, the meeting was George explaining Mortis to the whole crew and who was going to be writing it. He was like, okay, this is what we're going to do next.
And that was George's idea.
It's all George.
They come from George, yes. The ones.
And what's great is all the fans are thinking that Disney bought George's idea and was like, peace, thank you, we're going to run with it. But we still have Lucas ideas, especially here. Like this Mortis stuff. Can you explain it? And going forward, folks, if we talk about the Noti, yes, we're talking about the Ewoks, the little turtle guys. I don't know. I haven't read that anywhere else. I'd like everybody to know that I coined that term, the Ewoks. The little turtle snail Ewoks, as Delicom says in the comments. They are the Ewoks, and they're my favorite characters next to Baylan in this season because I love little cute animals like that. They're the best. So anybody who uses a slingshot is the best. Okay. Ian, I think we got to explain the Mortis thing to people who did not watch. So listen, let's talk
about it. Well, we should talk about it anyway because we need to talk about what we were given there to in any ways, postulate on where they're going with it.
Absolutely, because you sent me an article that I thought was really valuable in explaining it because I just thought the ending of this season was scope with the Baylan stuff, and I thought it was really cool, and I thought it was beautiful imagery, and I was still in it to win it because I enjoy this season so much. But when I started reading about the Mortis stuff, I was like, wow, this is cool. Again, look, rest in peace, Ray Stevenson.
In essence, there's 3 episodes of the Clone Wars. They're kind of trippy. Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Anakin go through a portal, a black hole, whatever. They go in and they end up in what they believe to be a different dimension, whatever, and this planet Mortis. And they encounter 3 beings. the father, the son, and the daughter. And the son represents the dark side, the daughter represents the light side, and the father represents the balance. He's the one that basically keeps the peace. And it's basically this whole thing that the father's aware that Anakin, is supposedly the prophesied, balance. And basically the idea is that he wants Anakin to stay there and take his place because he's going to die or go away. And over the course of it, Ahsoka gets killed and the daughter gives her life force to bring her back to life. And Anakin is actually shown his future as Darth Vader by the son, straight up shown it, and believing to be alive. Of course, it's the audience knows he's actually shown the actual true future. Okay, and given a choice to stay, and ultimately they don't stay, and their memories are wiped. But an aspect of the daughter, the Mirai, which is this owl thing, continually from then on appears to Ahsoka, like it's
throughout Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
That's cool.
And so back in the episode of Mandalorian the Jedi, you see the Mirai.
In the tree where she's training, where he goes.
Yes.
That's so cool, guys. That's so cool.
And you see
I read a lot of articles about this stuff, and I didn't catch that in any of the articles that was a Mirai.
Yeah, Morai's in the last episode of the Clone Wars as well, where Vader. Spoilers. There's a time jump around the time when Vader is in his full armor, and he finds a lightsaber that he gave to Ahsoka, and flying above him is Morai the Convor, and then Morai also appears a few times in Star Wars Rebels.
And so when you saw it in Mandalorian, you were losing your mind. Oh shit, that's so fucking cool.
I yelled about it in the finale of Ahsoka. My girlfriend had no idea. She was like, it's an owl thing. I was like, Morai. I was like, the Convor.
Yeah. And not only that, but Ian, going back to what you told us about Anakin being told by the father that he needed to replace him as the balance between the son and the daughter in this episode. The father is the statue Baylan's standing on at the end of the season. And then you see Mirai, and you see the look of kind of acceptance from Anakin there at the end.
1 second. Let's talk about what Baylan says his whole motivation is. He's tired of the back and forth. Because if you think about Star Wars history, it's, okay, the Jedi are sort of in power. The Sith are sort of in power. And it just keeps going back and forth. He's tired of the back and forth.
Oh, he would have loved the sequel trilogy. He would have loved the sequel trilogy. So he would have been the biggest fan. When she says, I'm Palpatine or Skywalker at the end, he would have been like, he would have done the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the screen and been like, awesome, it's done.
But that's exactly the point. He wants to end that because are we going again? It's this way, it's that way. Who's in power? Who's not in power? So how would he do that? If he's actually going to. There's a theory out there essentially that.
I'm sorry, Ian,
Baylan maybe was looking to take the place of the father.
And you're chopping up on us. You're chopping up on us. If you want to repeat that real quick. Sorry.
That there's a theory about Baylan taking the place of the father, and theoretically, Ahsoka taking the place of the daughter, and maybe Shin takes the place of the son. Baylan's
cool.
apprentice. It's an interesting idea that I could see them at least, exploring with all of them still there, right? So that's an interesting idea. And
when it ends up being Ezra, are people going to be ticked?
Well, Ezra's gone. So it's not going to be Ezra. So the bigger idea, though,
does it have to happen on this planet?
Well, that's what we don't know. I mean, is this Mortis
pointing to something? Yeah, in a similar way in Star Wars Rebels, there was a painting of the father that eventually pointed to the portal that Ezra used to get to the world between worlds. The statue, what Baylan is standing on his hand, and he's pointing, and if you see off in the distance, there's something flickering on a mountaintop. It's the Eye of Sauron. And so we know there is a goal, a destination, whether that takes you to Mortis, whether it's another obelisk that you go into, whether Peridia is revealed as Mortis, we don't know. But
Raymond Russell in the comments says they were in Rebels too, right? The mural that opens some sort of Lothwolf gateway or something. Cool. Okay, Raymond's with you. Christian and I are catching up.
That's actually what I wanted to jump in with, Jonathan, because you and I we've gone on record as not being as caught up. It is cool and it's interesting, but the show.
I don't give a shit.
I was going to say the show works on the level of like, oh, this is a really cool story. Oh, that means something, but it doesn't take away from the show.
Yeah,
I think that there are a couple of a couple of leaps. A really good friend of mine who's only watched live action stuff. he texted me after the episode with the space whales. He's like, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen." He's like, "I'm so angry."
Don't be friends with that guy anymore.
Well, he was best man at my wedding. I kind of have to.
Okay,
but I
no,
just
you don't
so.
have to.
But I think that's
he in
like
the
the one
comments?
person that I heard that from. You know what I mean? Because for
I
the
had a
most
friend the
part,
same. Space
Yeah.
Whales, I'm out. And
Yeah,
he stayed
right,
it,
exactly.
You know?
Wait, that was your first marriage, though. If you get married
No.
again, I'll do it,
okay, yeah, that's what I'm waiting for.
and then we can erase that guy.
Right,
Space
exactly.
whales are cool, man. We learned that from
Way of
Farscape.
Water, Ahsoka.
Like
Rebels,
Farscape,
Space
like
whales.
if you don't have whales or these
Right?
Ewoks in there, then like you're not really doing sci-fi. I'm sure Star Trek's done it at some point.
X-Men
They
did it.
with the
Yeah.
they did it with Discovery with the spore drive.
You
So,
tell that
yes,
to your best
yeah.
man. Not so,
Tell it to
he-
Payakon.
yeah, that guy's fourth best man now.
Right, exactly.
That guy's
You
Tim
guys are-
Story's.
you
he's
guys
Tim
are 1
Story's
through
best
3.
man at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah. All right, getting back to it. Now that I'm getting over my anger at whale. Okay.
Well, no.
Well slander.
The point that Christian
Well
made that I
slander.
think is really valid is, okay, great, sure. You know, Garrett and I get this on a different level, and we're totally getting the Easter eggs, or at least where they're leading. But it's okay if you didn't get it, because it's sort of a cool, interesting thing that calls back so many other classic, stories. I mean, it's Joseph Campbell storytelling, right?
Mhm.
That's what Lucas loved anyway. And you know what? So great. In the next season, you'll see this journey. You'll see what this is, and that's fine.
Will there be a next season, Ian?
Well, that's the thing is, I mean,
Because I
looking at
I
ratings,
intentionally
Parks
did not
Day,
call this Ahsoka season 1 special because this is now part of a fabric over there at the Disney Plus shows that involves Mandalorian, involves Boba Fett, possibly. It involves everything.
This
leading up
was
to this
written for there to be
movie.
a season 2. It doesn't guarantee it.
Okay.
But this was not written as a one-off, because if Ahsoka and Ezra, got, and Sabine all got back at the end of episode 8, this was just a setup thing. It's a bridge to what's next, which Thrawn's back, and it's that movie.
Right.
But no, we don't get. I mean,
we get an Empire
there's
Strikes Back
nowhere
ending
else
here.
we get what happened to Ahsoka if it isn't season 2.
Right. She and Sabine are stranded on this far off planet with the Ewoks. And I think it's so cool, man. And I want to see a Mandalorian season dealing with the appearance of Thrawn. I want to see how the appearance of Thrawn shifts things in the underworld that maybe Boba Fett has to deal with to give him a goal beyond civil planning. Like, I want to see all that
about
stuff.
this when we talked about the Mandalorian, which is, look, the ending of that Mandalorian season, I was really surprised that they resolved the Mandalorian, call it Civil War, Moff Gideon, all that stuff so quickly. I did not think, wow, going into season 3, that would be it, and my feeling was the setup at the end there was they basically turned the presumed next season of The Mandalorian into the Rangers of the New Republic show that they ended up not doing. And that's fine. And that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that could be a really cool show. So
Agreed.
My feeling is that I think we're still, a season or 2 of maybe every one of those shows, talking about maybe Boba Fett, certainly Mandalorian and Ahsoka, before you get the Thrawn movie. That's
And
my
possibly
opinion.
a Space Rangers or whatever it's called show.
I don't think we're getting that show.
That
I think
one's-
I think they've moved that
You
show
think
into
that's
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian season 3?
Yeah. 4.
Or 4.
Yeah.
Raymond Russell is saying, "Hey, Geekscapists, this felt like the next season of Rebels. Also, don't sleep on Rebels. I don't think any of us intend on sleeping on Rebels. Like that was really revered when it came out. People really loved it. And all that stuff is on Disney Plus, and
It has James Earl
sometimes I watch
Jones.
that stuff. Yeah. Guys, speaking of appearances of stuff like that, when Anthony Daniels reprised his role as C-3PO in that surprise appearance, I think in episode 6 or 7, like your heart leaps out of your chest,
Episode
right?
7. Yeah.
That was great. And it was fun, even if it was like, hey, what's C-3PO doing here? It's a little bit of a, Deus Ex Machina to get out of that situation, but we didn't care. We got Anthony Daniels back as C-3PO.
Forget the Deus Ex Machina of it. I don't actually agree with you there.
Leia sends
it
3PO
sort of is, but because the question becomes, where the hell is Leia? And unfortunately, it was great to get 3PO because you can't get Leia. And that is the problem.
If they had given us CGI AI Leia, that would be a very different conversation right now. Giving us C-3PO was perfect. It's like,
but
it's
sort of going like Leia can't be there. Why couldn't she go on? She could be on a holovid and beam in. But no, they didn't do that because.
Can I ask
just to answer Ian's question, and then Garrett, of course, but she had already gone over her roaming minutes on her data plan, so she couldn't film one. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. I'm curious because I've just been getting a lot of people's opinion on this recently. Obviously, we're building to this movie where the Imperial Remnant versus the New Republic. Do you think that there's going to be a point where they kind of have to address the Luke Skywalker, the Han Solo, the Leia?
That's exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah, and I'm curious because there's been a debate, and I think I lean way towards one side than the other, is the idea of recasting those characters. Because I'm personally, I do not want the deep fakes anymore. I don't want the CG faces. I don't understand. I think this show showed a perfect example of you can use, like for Mon Mothma. We just, it didn't break anything that we have an actress that has played her primarily in prequel storytelling, now being the sequel storytelling. I think. And
I told Ian when she showed up here, I went to IMDb and I said, Ian, she's been playing this character since episode 3.
Yeah.
And she's awesome.
Yeah.
She
in Rebels too.
And she played it through Rebels. She played it obviously in Andor, and she played it here.
She'll probably be in the movie.
I was like, wait.
Yeah.
Guys, this has been 20 plus years, and she's been playing Mon Mothma this whole time. Episode 3 on, and it's awesome. And I don't hear her get the kudos I think this actress deserves. She's really great at it.
I love her, and
great in Andor. One of the incredible performance.
That being said, when we do merge these things, obviously we have Luke Skywalker in the Mandalorian stuff already, but when this stuff ultimately merges, do we need those characters that much? Do we need the presence of the Luke and Leia and Han that much?
It's really weird to not see them. Obviously, depends.
But they don't need to be the onus of the.
I wouldn't want them to be the main characters. No, I would. I just think it's like with Mandalorian season 2. At a point, you needed Luke Skywalker to come in when you have this Imperial Remnant that have an army. Like at some point, those characters.
And there's a Darksaber flying out. Yeah,
it's like at a point. I'm not, I've gone back and forth with people on this. It's not so much that I'm dying for. I have enough. Luke Skywalker is my favorite Star Wars character. I have plenty of Luke Skywalker stories. I'm just saying, I just think it's too many hoops are having to be jumped through. I think you just acknowledge them, and then
he starts to Forrest Gump a little
scenes, bit. I don't want him in the shows necessarily, but in that movie,
if it's to the amount that they have used them in the Disney Plus shows, especially like, guys, I loved the opening of the 4th or whatever this most recent Indiana Jones. I thought that the de-aging was awesome. If it's on that level, guys, I'll take those characters back.
Yeah,
I'll take them back because I thought the opening of that Indiana Jones
big budgeted movie though
was awesome. This will be a big budgeted movie. This will not be on Disney Plus. This will be, in a sense, something that can probably give fans like a closure that they can get to that story without having to visit the sequels.
Leia is going to be the problem, obviously, because you can do it with Han, you can do it with Luke. It's going to be
also Harrison is not coming back even for a CG face. He's
right, but that's what I'm saying, man. That Indiana Jones was awesome. What's his name? Get the
Alden Ehrenreich. Bring Alden Ehrenreich, please. I'm begging. Pay your actors and bring back Alden Ehrenreich.
Don't you like him? I thought he was great.
I love him. Pay your actors and bring him back.
You're sorry, just for the layman, you're talking about the actor in Solo, right?
Yes.
I thought he was great. Yeah, I like that movie. I like that movie better than a lot of other Star Wars movies that had come out in the years around it. I won't name names.
I love Solo,
but I thought he was great.
In that Coen Brothers movie, he's fucking awesome too.
Yeah,
here's
the thing about those characters. Do they need to be in a Thrawn movie? I mean, notwithstanding the original ideas behind Thrawn, the whole idea of Leia's in the background. If it was only a military fight movie, maybe not. Now you bring the Night Sisters in, it's full on Force stuff. I mean, how do you do it without Luke? It doesn't really line up. Luke has to be in that fight, right?
Yeah, you just have Mara Jade come in.
would be awesome. And listen, it's Filoni.
And Dash Rendar.
You're joking. But look what Filoni's already
Kyle
done.
Katarn.
Listen, look what Filoni's already done. Everyone's hungry for all these things. And Filoni, he has a list. Don't be surprised.
Good, because I grew up on that stuff for real, guys.
I know, I'm saying.
Nobody talked to me in middle school and high school. I was straight up playing my like Dark Empire 1 and 2 with the original Dark, troopers, and I love that stuff.
Look,
I still love all that stuff.
When Thrawn showed up in Rebels, and suddenly Thrawn is now canon again, and for us to now end up here, what Filoni has done is he's literally done the full circle of getting to, it's now heir to the Empire. That's what it is with Night Sisters. And
I was annoyed when he used the heir to the Empire title as an episode title, because I was like, come on, man, leave something sacred. But that being said,
that's the point.
Rock and roll, because I kind of wanted heir to the Empire to be the name of the movie.
And Jonathan, and the head Night Sister is Claudia Black.
Yeah, you had to point that out because the makeup is so intensive on those Night Sisters, but I couldn't unsee it as I went forward. Knew, you couldn't, and I love it because Farscape is the greatest science fiction ever created. Don't be wrong about that. Geekscape, named after Farscape. Somebody, Delicom, I think in response to your best man, who's really getting raked across the coals, Delicom says, listen, I'll buy into these wizard samurai monks running around with their light swords fighting mythic evil, but space whales, I'm out. Raymond Russell says, can we get some chiss? And somebody
got
says,
one Thrawn.
Yeah,
I want some Yosemite Miri too, because I think that you can solve the Night Sisters real fast by tossing a couple worms at those little snake guys at them.
I want to say there's some people. I wonder how did that Thrawn being so brilliant play to people that didn't know that character so well? Because for me, I'm forgiving a lot like it's Thrawn and he's a step ahead of everything. But I do feel like some people are like, all right, whatever, like he didn't do anything.
He stranded their asses.
Yeah, right.
How he didn't detect, how he didn't just stomp them.
It wasn't about his ego. He didn't care. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go now.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that he overlooked Ezra coming aboard and all that. But if he has a plan for Ezra,
I don't think
we don't know.
I think he just missed that.
Okay, so that was an overlook.
I was a little surprised they gave us that so quickly. Like they didn't even show us how. But fine, he's in Stormtrooper uniform and he took a shuttle. But I was surprised they just did it just like that. Like, okay.
Yeah.
And I knew as soon as it was coming, that's what it was. But I was a little surprised by that.
Chris Fallon says, I was disappointed that Zeb didn't appear, especially since the Rangers showed up. You're right. The Rangers showed up in that episode 7.
Yeah. We didn't get him yet, but we know he's out there and he will, it all come together. And I think, again, that's my point. I think the way it's set up, the Ranger show is now Mandalorian with the Rangers. And that's kind of cool. And
which can also be a Boba Fett season.
Yeah. Or bring them together, whatever, or whether you do another season of Book of Boba Fett or just have Boba Fett fall back into it. Obviously, that's the universe and they're all going to be in the movie.
I really wanted to see a Boba Fett. I mean, we talked about the Boba Fett finale. Go back and listen to that episode of Geekscape. I thought that bringing back the bounty hunters from Empire would have been a great finale whenever she said, hey, go get us some backup, and you started seeing like Bosk and people IG-88 show up. I would have been like, oh, this is a party. We got the Magnificent Seven of bounty hunters in like a showdown right here. Get all those guys. That would have been a sick ending to
speaking of things that not everyone watches or reads, the current Marvel comics are canon, and has all of those characters popping up all over the place.
Delicom says, for a unrelated question for the group, do we ever get a Chiss ascendancy series further down the line? Give me Star Wars, Game of Thrones, West Wing, please.
Sounds really cool. The answer is no.
Yeah, it would have to be a series, and I think the series, guys, like on these Disney Plus series, is this a kind of like going down in popularity and what reward? Is it like a declining reward here for Disney to be making these things?
I think that Ahsoka is not that she's really a fringe character, but you have to think about what they were. You got a Mandalorian, which it's sort of like Boba Fett. Boba Fett's a big name. Obi-Wan's a big name. Andor was definitely like, all right, you're going to have to come along with us for this ride. And the series was great, so people forgive it.
Word of mouth, definitely.
I think once you get beyond Ahsoka, it's like, all right, but who are the big characters that you can do? And I mean, if they were to actually spend time with Thrawn, just about him, I want to shout out Lars Mikkelsen, who portrays him. What to circle back on this idea of how we don't really see him do anything, it's kind of like what I thought the first time I saw Return of the Jedi, where the Imperial Guard, the guys in red, never did anything in the whole movie, and you're like, oh, that's because they're the most badass ones on that Death Star. That if they need to, and we get to see a variation on that later in subsequent canon, but and it just like watching him, just his underplaying the reaction. It's almost like Ian McDiarmid as Senator Palpatine, underplaying everything, no big reactions, and just like, oh, she was Padawan to Anakin Skywalker, interesting, which is like. Playing it that way, it's like it's such a big crazy reaction for us, to be like, okay, now he's connecting the dots, let's see. I don't know, I think that those are the sort of things we're more likely to get, but I mean, I'm not going to pretend I know what that person in the chat asked for. Like, I haven't even heard of that.
There's a whole line of canon. Timothy Zahn has come back and written Thrawn. He wrote a Thrawn trilogy. One of those features Thrawn and Anakin Skywalker. And then he wrote another one, Chiss Ascendancy. And actually, those books, in the Star Wars fandom, which I try to only keep myself to the positive counts and stuff like that. There is a little bit of friction with depictions.
All three people,
Filoni's version of Thrawn and Zahn's version of Thrawn, so a lot of ons, they clash a little bit. I know that is something that some people. There's a little friction, I guess, that some people have. But.
Well, yeah, because there was, what Zahn did was the original thing, and then that became not canon. And I mean, to me, give Filoni credit for at least bringing it in. And
well, his canon, I'm just saying his canon books paint Thrawn in a very different light, and then.
How so? This didn't feel but this didn't feel entirely different than what I was reading in the Zahn books.
There's new Thrawn books. There are.
The new Thrawn books are fitting into current canon now.
Starting around when Rebels brought him in season 3, Zahn wrote a new book that was just called Thrawn, and then Thrawn Alliances, and I can't remember what the third one.
But how are they different than the Thrawn that we knew? How is this not just
his crusade is much more painted as he's only working with the Empire to help the Chiss Ascendancy, and he is painted more of a sympathetic character. And then when he shows up in Rebels, he is a lot more like, and even in the show, he says, long live the Empire. He's a lot more like, we're doing this for the Empire. And so but then some people think that he isn't a villain. He is a villain. Ultimately, he falls in a similar way to Anakin. But there is some friction in what he is necessarily fighting for, whether he is so allegiant to the Empire that he would say something like, long live the Empire, things like that.
See, my take is, because I knew some of that, and like there was a comic, Thrawn background.
It adapted one of those.
That's canon. And my feeling is that's what he's saying. That doesn't mean that's all he is and that's all that's going on.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing.
Say, I wish some people would. Yes. Yeah, I agree. I wish some people would think. I think too often, who would have thought that the internet would have so many snap reactions? Right. I think some people miss the nuance, and I think lines get picked to death because a lot of people, like I mentioned with the Anakin and Ahsoka thing, Anakin saying, to paraphrase, like, you aren't a failure because I wasn't a failure, or something like that. People picked that up and said, like, oh, well, he's just saying because he's like, has no agency. He's saying that, oh, because I'm great, you're great because I taught you. And that's not what he's saying. He's saying, I'm more than my failures. You're more than your failures. But because people just want to make a snap reaction, they don't read into the nuance. But
to me, he's the character that's playing chess. Like, ultimately, like, he plays chess.
Yes.
And that's how I thought about him back in middle school when I read the Zahn books. And he is still very much depicted as the character in all the stories from it. Whether it's canon or not canon, Thrawn is the character that plays chess while everybody else is playing checkers. That's what I love about him. It's so much fun. And he doesn't have superpowers. He's an Imperial who is an alien who built himself up as a tactician to the point where he was respected by people who were incredibly racist against alien races and did not give them promotions to the level that Thrawn achieved.
That's right.
Which is just a credit to how much of a badass he is. I cannot wait to see tactician. It in the fucking movie. Let's go.
Well, but by the way, that's what's great about the last season of Rebels is you see Thrawn. He's just decimating them, and the only reason they don't beat him, Ezra sacrificed himself just to get Thrawn off the board.
That's what I got from this. Yeah. I'm in. Facebook user over here who has not registered with StreamYard, so we don't see his name, says, have you talked about the Koopas, the little turtle people? Yeah, dude, they're my favorite characters.
That's all
Of course I
London
talked
talked
about.
about.
Guys, I totally talked about the Erox for like 20 minutes. Delicom says, we'll know what direction if we ever get Eli Vanto cameo in the upcoming shows. Who is that, Garrett? Eli Vanto?
He is the ensign that is assigned to Thrawn when he starts to acclimate to the Empire. So he's kind of his guide, but also he becomes like a close friend and confidant. Many people have wanted to see him be brought
Human
into
character.
live action. Yes, yeah, he
Oh,
helps
great.
Thrawn start to. They learn from each other, but he's
like a
trying
Bib
to help him
Fortuna
acclimate
type.
into the Empire. Kinda,
No,
bit.
Bib
Just not
Fortuna
as-
took his own
not
fucking
as-
place. No, Bib
Yeah.
Fortuna's a jerk. He saw his chance and he took it, and then he started eating too much. Bib Fortuna was pretty bloated
as
when
we
saw
would
it
all
again.
do if we took
Yeah,
over
totally.
Jabba's
I'd be eating
empire.
so many frogs by the time I got to that throne. Ian, you were going to say something. Sorry.
So I feel like, I don't think we talked enough about Morgan Elsbeth.
Yes, she was awesome.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
But what do you
she
need a
was
sword
awesome,
for if you have witch powers?
right? My feeling was, so Ahsoka
What do you need
ends
a
up with that
sword-
sword.
oh,
I feel
for?
like they created that sword because it has to come into play later.
Well, that
Was
sword
it-
is from
yeah.
Clone Wars. Yeah, I mean,
Oh, then
the
that's
sword.
rock and roll.
Yeah, the sword of Talzin. Mother Talzin, the sword is named after.
Right.
She fought Mace Windu with that very sword. So it was just kind of.
I'm
Like a
saying
little
so.
throwback.
I think that, but the need for having it, I feel like it's because now Ahsoka has it, right?
Hmm.
Presumably,
Yeah, she lost a blade, so
right?
make up for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So
Raymond
I think
Russell
that's
thinks it's
interesting.
He says it's easier though. He says because flaming sword, flaming
Right.
sword.
It's the same reason. It's the same reason why do Jedi need laser swords if they can do all these miraculous
Yeah.
things with the
They can
Force?
force push.
it's
They can
part-
force
it's-
lift.
And
force
Ezra
throw.
said, "Hey, I don't need it. I'm good."
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
I like
she
it.
did-
I love that meme. I sent you guys that meme about like it was right out of Rey and Luke.
where he tosses the lightsaber.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we knew Luke was going to do that the second that episode 8 started. I was like, he's tossing that lightsaber because that we knew that the director was going to try and shake things up, which I thought was great. I love that. The great thing about episode 8 is it really tries to change the board up, whether or not you think it succeeds or fails. Or I don't think it entirely succeeds or fails. I think it's just
go
super
off on a
interesting.
tangent about episode 8 right now.
But
because
guys,
there's other things to talk about.
here, this is what I liked about it. It felt like the familiar, but it also felt like some really fresh stuff. And ultimately, I think whether or not you're making Star Wars, it has to move. And this stuff moved. The fight in the trees with the ninja shadow fight in the trees, that was awesome. Like,
I thought
guys,
it was really cool stuff. Listen, I saw those last two episodes on the big screen with at the DGA with a great audience. The DP was there, chatted with her about a bunch of stuff. By the way, the episode that you love so much with all the Clone Wars stuff in it, she did it all practical. They were mad at her. She got a lot of grief about it.
And they didn't shoot that on the volume.
Yeah. No.
Ah,
They wanted her to use the volume, and she didn't.
Love
and
it.
She got
with all the smoke and everything.
It's awesome. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
the volume's great and everything.
Awesome.
Come on, guys. We can't just all go volume like that. Oh, I love that episode. I thought it was beautiful. Somebody criticized it and was like, you could tell they shot on a volume. I was like, I'm not so fucking sure, man. Because like the depth is something you don't necessarily get, and you interact with things coming from depth into like the characters playing, and that's really hard to do on a volume.
No, I agree. And I also want to say, I thought for the most part, I really enjoyed the fight scenes. I had some people complain to me that they thought Rosario was moving a little too slow. I don't disagree there. I thought some of the movement, compared to stuff we've seen with other lightsaber combatants, I thought she got the moves down. I thought she looked really good doing them.
I mean,
I thought it was going-
did she move slow compared to Sir Alec Guinness? I think she looked great.
To me, it felt like it
Absolutely
was
right.
it was
Absolutely
going
right.
samurai. I thought they were samurai moves. I thought it
Yes.
was precision over Yoda flipping around. And it's one thing that I don't enjoy about that Rogue One ending is that you suddenly aren't a samurai. You're something out of the Force Awakens, or not Force Awakens, the video games. It felt like more like a video game than you can't have these guys flying like around, and you lose the whole samurai mystique of it.
So one thing I love about honestly,
Force
when you
Unleashed is what I was trying to say.
When you look at that ending of Rogue One, and then when you look at the ending of Kenobi, and it sort of justifies, and this has been discussed here and there about why is the fight so lame in episode 4 compared to what we see later that took place before. And the answer is that we're supposed to understand that they're not even bothering with all that Force stuff because they cancel each other out.
Yeah.
So it's a simple duel, and it's a little slower because they're actively using the Force against each other while they're doing it. Right?
Well, shout out to that last episode of Kenobi and Hayden's acting with that half mask because dude was acting with one eyeball showing, and it was fucking awesome. I love the beauty, the imagery of that stuff, and you see it here.
I wanted to something I did want to give a shout out to was the costumes. Baylan, Skoll, Shin, Noti, translating Anakin's outfit to from Clone Wars to the live action screen.
Yeah.
I hope it's hard for me to pronounce her name. Shauna Tripsick. She just recently passed away. She was the lead costume designer for this show,
Mandalorian. Who was she? Because my friend Emily Swallow put her on her Instagram because Emily plays the armorer, and I did a deep dive, and that is a big loss because she did some incredible work on all these D+ shows.
I was watching a behind the scenes. There was like an 8-minute behind the scenes for Ahsoka that was released, and I had been to watch it on the day she passed. And you see her like dressing up Rosario, and it's just. Yeah, she was a very.
What? Was it an accident?
I don't know. I just saw the reaction. But she did across all these shows. She has done such incredible work, and I hope her work will continue to live on. But it is such a tragic passing.
Yeah, that one surprised me.
Sorry, it's a good point in the sense of imagine taking these, yes, it's with a certain segment of the fandom, but these beloved animated characters and getting them on the screen for the first time, whether it's Bo-Katan, whether it's Ahsoka, even Chopper,
I loved Chopper. I texted Ian. I was like, I fucking love Chopper. I didn't watch Rebels, but I love Chopper.
They didn't look and move right. Just imagine if Sabine hadn't looked right. Everybody would have been like, "Oh, come on!"
And Sabine was so perfect, even down to the way she stood, everything. I mean, and even Ezra, all right, this idea of an adult Ezra, I was like, and I bought it.
Yeah. Can I just say in the finale, we're seeing, when we cut into when they get inside the castle, when we cut to Ahsoka in the middle of the frame, all white, her 2 white lightsabers, Ezra holding a lightsaber that looked like Kanan Jarrus. Kanan Jarrus is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. And Sabine in her full Mandalorian armor with her green lightsaber. To go full fanboy, it was one of the most beautiful things I've seen.
I was in the theater and everyone cheered.
That's all. I wish I could have been there for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, guys, I hope that there's more to it because Ahsoka I thought was a fantastic series, and that is coming from somebody who walked in without a whole lot of knowledge beyond what had come in the Disney Plus shows, and guys, credit to just good storytelling. It clipped, it was fun, and as Facebook user says, just give me space wizards doing cool space wizard shit. And I think as long as the pace keeps up, I think it's so much fun. Hopefully, where do we think that we're going to see these characters again? Mandalorian season 4, Ahsoka season 2, with the strike and with different things, and I think the landscape of streaming is changing. Sure. I think that this is going to delay things, but we'll see these characters again.
Well, it's their own fault that it's delayed. The studios,
yes, of course.
But it is problematic about that. John, I think we talked about this a little bit. In our thread, the amount of time, because it takes a long time to make these things. And if we do assume there's another season, look, odds are Filoni's already written another season. I mean, it's just a question of when they could start. They try to be very secret about that, but obviously it has to be greenlit. But here's the thing. If it's greenlit, it's happening, it's probably already happened. They just haven't done a public announcement yet.
Sure.
Yeah, so, I think that this season doesn't end the way it does if they're not convinced that they will at least tie it up, even if it's another season where it's like surprise Disney Plus only movie, something like that, or 2 parts.
They were shooting Mando season 2 before Mando season 1 even ever came out.
That's right.
When you read the behind the scenes stuff. So they, like you said, before the writer's strike, he may have already written the scripts because they were done shooting this thing a while ago.
Right.
They were shooting that done last year.
And I think when it's sorry, Ian. But I think when it's effects intensive stuff that you want it to look good, we're all willing to be like, oh, it's going to be 2 years, 2.5 years. Okay, if it comes out good, we'll be okay with it.
By the way, effects wise, and a friend of mine commented, it held up on the big screen for a very knowledgeable audience. It's like, the effects are that level,
That's great.
So, but yeah, some of that effects take time. Some of it is that they're having these things come out when they want. I mean, there are decisions being made, about that and where they're placing them. I know Disney Plus, they're not trying to have several things on at once so they get lost. I mean, there's a lot going on about them, pulling back on what they're making, but I'd be really surprised we don't get a second season of this.
Well, I hope it's soon. We're already watching Loki, all of us, so we'll be back for some Loki in about 5 weeks to talk about that. And guys, we also have the Marvels coming out in November, and Garrett's favorite,
something that's
Aquaman
coming
2. No, I'm looking forward to the Marvels. You guys think I'm crazy, but
no, the trailers have gotten better.
Looking forward to it. I'm totally looking forward to the Marvels. I like all this stuff, guys. I was telling somebody today
because they've disappointed me. Marvel's hurt me a few times now.
Sure, but you know what, guys? Just remember back to when we were first reading I'm not speaking for Garrett, but when I was first reading those Timothy Zahn books, and
how old were you?
Guys, I was in middle school, and I was all by myself as a Star Wars
25,
fan. Yeah, and like guys in middle school, high school, Jonathan, waiting for Rebel Assault 2, so we could see the first live action acting film done in the Star Wars universe since Return of the Jedi. I'm buying Rebel Assault 2 on CD-ROM so I can do it. I'm buying Wing Commander 3 and 4 so I can see Mark Hamill in live action in a video game. Like, I am loving all this stuff, and now to have it. All the Marvel stuff and the Star Wars stuff, and I'll take the DC stuff too because Blue Beetle fucking rocked. Like, guys, I'm not gonna do the naysaying thing with I know,
be backhanded.
Guys, I know that there's a lot of dip.
Hey guys, I want everyone to pay attention here. Jonathan's not doing the naysaying thing.
This shit is awesome.
He says he's not gonna do the naysaying thing.
I'll naysay later when the individual things sometimes
when the red lights on.
What Heidi put in his water, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Craig Robinson says Ezra and Chopper to join the mod gang in Boba Fett season 2. Yeah, fuck it, let's go.
Fucking A.
Because little middle school Jonathan reading the Zahn books and the Dark Empire comics, man, would he dream of a day like this? Let's do it. Guys, thanks for joining me on this. This was fun. I hope the next series is as much fun as this one.
I want the Grogu and Chopper show.
Guys, I'll take. I was sitting here and I was thinking about Hayden being back and how we got a appearance of Qui-Gon in Obi-Wan, and I was like, it's time. It's time for Misa seeing my friend. No, don't feel like that.
Yes,
come on, let's
bring him back.
Bring back Jar Jar.
He was in the books. He was in one of the books, and they made it really sad. Bring him back.
Let's bring him back. Bring him back. I'm ready.
It's time.
I'm ready.
He's a lot more problematic than he used to be, and he works in a book. But
we'll smooth that out.
You might have to.
We open on 3PO.
Every bit as problematic.
We open
realize it now.
He was in.
We open on 3PO, giving him diction lessons.
I forgot about that.
We open on 3PO, teaching him a new language to speak. And suddenly he's doing Pigeon English, whatever the heck it was.
Jonathan, what you said so many times, I was in high school reading the Timothy Zahn books, but also alone and also so excited. And I want to shout out Timothy Zahn because 91 was the first one. Timothy Zahn, if you see him at a convention, he'll sign his books. You don't have, he'll sign them for free. Other stuff he charges for, but if you paid for one of his books, he's like, I feel like you've already spent enough money on it. So I had him sign all 3 of my books at Comic-Con Revolution this summer. So
oh man, they're
great
all.
To chat with him.
I still have all 3 of those books back in Austin, and maybe it's time I get them out to me so I can get Timothy's on to do it. Well, I'll see you guys at LA Comic-Con. I'll see you guys here to speak Loki. We're having fun. LA Comic-Con's so nice to me. They sent me an email, said, oh yeah, all those 8 or whatever panels you submitted, we're putting them all through. So I may need you guys to cover for me on some panels.
To suck me into going on my birthday.
Ian,
by making my wife do a panel.
Well, I put your wife on a panel because we had a really successful panel this past summer. And Ian, if you'd like to come to the convention, you can come. It's a comic book convention. I know it's not your thing. It's got pop culture stuff. It's got celebrities. It's got fun stuff that's maybe up your alley. But if you if you want to spend the birthday alone,
the cast of Ahsoka will be there.
The cast of Ahsoka will be there. You know what? SAG strike pending.
That's true.
Right? But I'm hearing rumors of a few more weeks, and hopefully this thing resolves. Love you guys. Geekscapists, you know what to do. Subscribe and all that. Shout out to Chris Falios, who is in the chat of the hit One Hit Thunder podcast. And great talking
Can
to you
I
guys.
can I get a shameless plug in because you mentioned
Absolutely.
Loki? So we're
Please do.
we're covering Loki on my show, our show, but the show
Yeah.
that I co-host, Marvel Movie Talk, right here on Geekscape Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. So we're doing like an after show each Friday. We already did the premiere, so we'll do all 6, and that'll just whet people's appetite for the eventual Geekscape special. And we also have another episode where I spoke with the co-author of Scott Lang's book, Rob Kuttner, who I know was on here, and that'll be on Geekscape on Wednesday.
Yeah, if you guys are subscribed to the Geekscape YouTube channel, you guys will see it up on the YouTube channel this week. If you're watching this live, it'll be up on Wednesday. If not, go check out the YouTube channel. Subscribe to all of it. Okay, get out of here. Go watch some more geek content, read some comics, and play some video games. All right? Peace, everybody.